Oh my gosh. So today we're going to dive deep and we're going to talk about RPAs, residential purchase agreements. This is basically a contract that that a lot of people in the state of California use in order to put an offer in and purchase a home.
Yep. And one of the kind of big, well, not scary, but the big commitment type of step you take when you get acceptance, when you make an offer using the residential purchase agreement and the seller accepts your offer, is one of the first steps you have to take is you have to deposit into escrow.
Right.
Your earnest money deposit, which is, the way I look at it, it's like an act of good faith from the buyer to the seller saying, I'm putting money where my mouth is. Like, I'm telling you I want to buy your house, and I'm going to put a deposit down on your house while we go through our inspections and everything. Right? Is that like
absolutely. So typically in California, it's a 3% standard EMD, earnest money deposit. And, you know, when you're putting an offer in a house, it's one of those tools that you can use to make your offer look more attractive. That EMD is exactly what it sounds like. It's earnest money deposit. So it's your earnest money. It's saying, hey, I'm serious about buying your house. I'm a serious buyer. I'm not messing around. And it shows how, you know, how much you want to move forward and how much you're committed to purchasing that home. So it doesn't have to be 3. You know, if you really are serious and you're capable and you have the funds to bump it up, bump it up.
That's great. Is it, so I'm curious, like, does the value of the home or the purchase price ever make that 3% change, or is that pretty standard whether you're buying a $500,000 house or a $2 million house? Is that standard pretty much across the board?
Yep.
Okay. And what about for buyers? Like, I work with some veterans. I love my veteran buyers, and like, they may not have 3, if they're buying the house with no money down, they may not have 3%. So in circumstances like that, is there flexibility to have a smaller earnest money deposit?
Tell me about some options that you guys have at Cross Country about that helps veterans specifically, because their loans look different and their option of purchase look different than a traditional conventional loan or obviously a cash buyer.
Yeah, so, well, with VA loans, we can do no money down. So 100% financing, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Love that. And they so deserve that. It's an incredible benefit that they get. So what we do is, if they put an earnest money deposit into escrow to make their offer look stronger to the seller, and they had the funds to do it, they just get it refunded. Any of that deposit that was not used towards closing costs, because there's no down payment needed. Anything in excess of just the standard closing costs would just get refunded at the close of escrow back to the veteran. So they get that money back, but they still were able to, like, put a good faith earnest money deposit. In some circumstances, what I've seen on my end is, if for my veterans that don't have it, like, they just don't have that kind of money saved up to do it, that act of good faith, their agent just has to negotiate the deal for them where it's maybe only a 1% deposit or a no deposit. I mean, I know that certainly probably makes it a little harder for the seller to view them as a stronger buyer, but I've seen it done.
Yeah, I think I'm really glad that you touched on that, because I think that's a good point to make with regard to relationships, because we always talk about how relationships are so important, and who you choose to be your advocate and who you choose to work with is so important. And when you've picked an agent that has built those relationships in their community, that gives them so much more leverage in terms of negotiation. So if I were to have a veteran buyer and they don't have that 3% EMD, you know, but I'm in my zone, I'm in my place, you know, and I have my people, and, you know, I take care of them, they take care of me. That gives me more leverage, you know, to help, you know, go to bat for my clients and, you know, and help them get that house that they want.
Yeah, and that is so huge, Allie, and we've talked about this, you know, in just private conversations between us, how there's the textbook real estate 101 that you learn.
God, you were talking about that private conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
I was like, what's she gonna say?
Not together. No. So we've talked about how, there's the stuff like you learn in the textbooks when you get licensed.
Yes.
But then there's like the street smart knowledge. And part of that is, like you said, it's that trust. Those relationships. You've done transactions with other people in your community and they know they can trust you, that your word means something, that you do your due diligence, that you are ethical. You're professional, you operate to a high level of professional standards. And so that is huge, because when you do have a veteran buyer or a regular buyer that maybe they're getting a gift for their down payment and they don't have the money yet to put in some huge earnest money deposit, because the earnest money deposit, if we have failed to mention this, it's typically due within 3 days of your offer being accepted. So you don't have a lot of time. That wire has to go fast,
right?
Especially if you got into contract like on a Friday, and then the next day is like the weekend, and the business banks aren't open on the weekends, so it can come very quickly. So you have typically 3 days unless you've negotiated otherwise. So if one of my clients is getting a big gift for their down and they don't have a ton of their own savings on hand that they can liquidate, it is up to, I think, a lot of times the agent to be able to negotiate that appropriately with the seller's agent. And a lot of that is that trust, that credibility, your reputation, right? Like the agent is like, I trust Allie. Like, I know if Allie tells me this is good, it's good,
right?
It's trustworthy. So that's huge for sure.
100%. So I love that we talked about EMDs, and we're talking about your relationships and who you choose to work with, and why you're choosing to work with them. Who are they connected in that area? Are they, respected in that area? Are they trusted in that area? Those are all key points. Another thing that we talked about diving into is contingencies.
Yes.
So that's a huge chunk. That's a big part of the contract in your RPA or your residential purchase agreement that is going to show that you're strong and that you are in this, and that goes hand in hand with your agent that's representing you in their negotiation tactics. So let's dive into a little bit about loan contingency, obviously, for one, right?
Yeah.
So we talked about last week about being fully underwritten and making sure that all your ducks are in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So before you go in and start looking for homes, get all your ducks in a row, which means you reach out to your lender first, you get pre-approved, and you do your best to get fully underwritten before you go in. Because once you are fully underwritten and you're competing against other buyers that are cash, you're in the game. You're in it to win it. You're not going in there with just a pre-approval.
No, big difference. So, well, the first thing I think it's important to share with listeners is a contingency is a legitimate way out of the contract where you don't lose the deposit. So
what did you call them last week? Gimmies? Not outies. It's not an innie. It's not an outie. It's a gimme.
It's like a get out of jail free. No,
yes.
I'm kidding. No, but basically, when you put that deposit in, you are saying that you are going to perform on all the terms of the contract. Mm-hmm. And there's only a handful of ways that a buyer can back out of the contract without risking a penny of their earnest money deposit, which nobody wants to lose their earnest money deposit.
Right.
If for some reason they change their mind and they don't want to move forward with buying the house they've gotten into contract on.
Right.
So there's a few main contingencies, mm-hmm. which are the legitimate outs for a buyer to say, if this contingency isn't met or satisfied, I am allowed to get out of the contract without losing my deposit. And that's the first one you brought up is the big one. It's the loan contingency.
Right.
So most financed buyers require a loan contingency. And if for some reason they are denied loan approval, they can say, I'm so sorry, seller. I really wanted to buy your house. My loan did not get approved. Therefore, I cannot buy it. I am now taking my earnest money deposit back. No harm, no foul. Shake hands. So contingencies are huge because they are a negotiating platform, meaning you can use them to make your offer look stronger, which is what you alluded to, by waiving your loan contingency if you already have full credit approval in advance, or shortening it, like say you've already been working with a lender and you're very close to being fully credit approved, but maybe you're 5 days out. You could say, hey, I don't need those full 21 days. I only need 7 days on my loan contingency.
Yeah.
So again, the seller, if they have multiple buyers offering, they're going to stack those contracts next to each other, and they're going to be like, oh, buyer A needs the full 21 days on their loan contingency. Buyer B waived it. They don't even need one.
Yeah.
And buyer C needs 5 days. So they're looking pretty good too. It's like B is looking the best, C is looking decent, A is not so much.
Right.
So, so those are that is the loan contingency, for example. But there are other contingencies that are also in place, and all of these contingencies are really there to protect the earnest money deposit for the buyer. Okay, so we talked about the loan contingency. What is another important contingency that protects the buyer and gives them the opportunity, if they want, to pull out of the deal without risking their deposit?
Yeah, okay. So the next one that comes to mind is important, and it's the same amount of time. It's a standard 17 days, just like the loan. So when you have, this one is the inspection contingency. So there's clients that will buy a house sight unseen. You know, they will buy it through, you know, like we talked about earlier, is through like a Zoom call or FaceTime, pictures, and they'll buy it, you know, sight unseen. So when they have the opportunity, they have a standard 17 days to inspect the property. They have the choice. They have full access, and this is so important to know if you're selling a property. You cannot deny your buyer access to your property.
Wow. I did not know that. That's huge.
They have 17 days, because what if you were to, you know, you were to give, they said 10 days and you're like, oh no, I'm going to be out of town for 7 and no one has access to my house. Well, you're not holding up your end of the contract. Standard 17 days, it's a negotiating tactic. If you know, don't think you need 17 days because you've already gotten in touch with an inspector and you're like, I already booked something for tomorrow, I'm going to make my offer look better, you know, and putting 3 or 5 or whatever it is, you know. But when you do that, you have the opportunity to either walk the property and say, oh gosh, like that neighbor was really mean to me, or I really don't like the paint of the house, or wait, I didn't realize that the roof line sat like that. You know, whatever it is, it's a physical inspection. And you do have the right to hire professionals, an inspector or a mold or, you know, anything like that, or chimney. Not many people, I feel like that's kind of a can of worms, but, you know, you have the right to do that. And you have that time period to do that full inspection, to hold up your end of the contract, to keep your EMD safe.
Yeah, and that's huge because I feel like the physical inspection contingency is the broadest one. The other ones are very specific to a certain report or a certain approval.
Right.
This one, I feel like, has more latitude in that it's giving the buyer time to really like look at the property again, have professionals inspect it. If they have plans to, you know, if the house needs to be bigger for them, they can bring an architect in with them or a general contractor and just confirm like, hey, this is what we're thinking about. Is that look possible to you? Kind of like, can you give us a quick and dirty idea? So it just lets people kind of exhale from the frantic like offer buzz of making offers and getting acceptance, and exhale, and then have some time to like go back, make sure they feel really confident, they still love the house, nothing is brought to light through one of the inspection reports or just through your secondary or third visual inspection that changes that for you, changes how you feel about buying that home.
Right.
I've had people, you know, go at different times of the day and see what traffic is like on the street, how busy the street is, the lighting, the noise. To your point, Allie, I actually had a client, I've only had one client where this happened, but I had a client that before her physical inspection contingency ran out, she went and knocked on the doors of the 2 adjacent neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the neighbors was extremely rude to her children. And she was like, I can't raise my kids here. Like, my kids are going to be playing in the backyard, and this person might yell at them or be angry that they're laughing too loud. Or so she was like, I remember she felt terrible. She was like, I'm so sorry to do this, but like, I can't live next to this person who's really not a friendly person. So, it just gives you that time, right? To process all that and not have like a gun to your head. But to your point, it's also another opportunity to be strategic and to make yourself look more desirable to the seller by having a shorter physical inspection. And I have actually many, many times when the market is super hot and extremely competitive, kind of like the environment we're in now.
Mm-hmm.
I think this morning there was 27 offers on a property.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's we're there, you guys. If anyone is telling you otherwise, the reality is we're already there. But I've had many buyers even waive their physical inspection contingency because they are just pulling all the stops out. Like, they want to look the most attractive to the seller, and they're saying like, we don't care what we find in the inspection.
Right.
We're not going to change our mind for nothing.
Right.
So you can use that to make yourself look really strong as a buyer. But I think in general, my experience at least is most people do use that time to do some due diligence, right?
Right.
Wouldn't you say?
Totally.
Yeah. And it's important. Like, can you give us an example? Have you ever had a deal where like somebody found something that you just couldn't see with your naked eye after an inspection, like under plumbing or attic or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like those types of things are mostly like plumbing issues, especially where we live, because we live in such like a luscious landscape, terrain, like with all the trees that we have, like the pine and the eucalyptus and the pepper trees. There's a lot of root issues that can happen in homes, and you can't see that, and that can sometimes go unnoticed just by walking in. I mean, everything on the surface could look amazing, but you get underneath and you really lift up the skirt, for lack of a better term, and see that maybe it's not so great. Especially because not this red and it's also too like because of where we live, in PV, you being where you are on the peninsula, there are a lot of people on septic.
Oh yeah, I'm on septic.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to say like the city, because we're reaching international viewers. But
it's not everywhere, but it exists.
The septic is back there, and then there's a couple streets in RPV that are still on septic, and that's huge because you have no idea this giant tank of
poop.
When it was installed, what its integrity is. Does it have any cracks in it? When was it last cleaned?
That's such a great
was
example.
It cleaned every year? Was it cleaned once 28 years ago?
Oh, gosh.
Those are the type of things that you want to dig into.
Yeah, no, that's such a great example.
Literally.
No, not literally. Definitely not. Let the big guys in rubber suits,
take that deep dive.
Yeah. No, but that's a great example actually of something that you couldn't see with the naked eye, right?
Yeah.
You have to get a professional, and there are professional septic people that can give you a report on the condition of it and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I love the physical inspection contingency personally, because I feel like it's kind of a big catch-all for the buyer, and it is scary when you're like sending that deposit in. It's usually a big chunk of money.
Right.
And I feel like it just gives buyers that sense of security that like, okay, if something is discovered that is too big for me to handle, too big of a repair, too costly, I am not going to lose this money. So that's a really huge one. What's another really kind of prominent one that people use or sometimes waive.
Yeah, the appraisal contingency would be next.
Yeah.
That's really, really important, especially in the lending world.
Yep.
I mean, there's scenarios where, you have your appraisal come back and it comes back, significantly less than the price that you're purchasing it for. Then what?
Yeah.
What does that look like for you from a lending standpoint?
Yeah, so this is a great question for me because I always tell my clients there's two aspects to the appraisal. One is the emotional aspect, which is like you want to feel like you paid the right amount for the house you bought, right? As a consumer, you don't really want to feel like you overpaid. In a perfect world, you want to feel like you got a bargain, but that's just not really reality.
Right.
In a competitive market. It's not likely to happen, let's put it that way. But you want to feel emotionally like, okay, I paid a fair market price. So the emotional aspect of an appraisal is just having that affirmation that you paid the right amount for this huge, important investment.
Right.
And that is something that only the buyer can know how they're going to feel about if it comes in short. Now, the other side of it, the technical side of why it exists, is because the lender wants to know that they are collateralizing this mortgage against a property that has enough equity in it for them to feel comfortable making that loan. Right. So the lenders are very, very firm about what we call loan to value guidelines. Every lender has a limit of how much of a loan they will give in respect to its value. So a very common thing they run across the board, but a very common one we all hear about is like 20% down. Well, that means that lender will lend up to 80% of the value of the property and is expecting the buyer to come in with the 20% of their own savings. Right. So let's just pretend for this example that we're dealing with that loan program. Okay. And so the property needs to appraise at the purchase price in order for that buyer to get the loan they were expecting. If the property does not appraise at the purchase price, it appraises below the purchase price, now the lender is going to say, well, hold up. We are only comfortable lending 80% of either the purchase price or the appraised value, whichever is less. So if the appraisal comes in less than the contract price, the lender's going to say, well, now we have to reduce your loan amount to remain at 80% of this lower appraised value, which means what? The down payment
goes up.
Has to be increased.
Okay.
So that has an actual technical impact on the buyer. So for some buyers, they don't care. For some buyers, they're like, I can put more than 20% down. Like, I'm fine. I can bridge that gap.
Right.
For other buyers, they cannot bridge the gap. For other buyers, they are literally like rubbing their last two dimes together to make their down payment, or getting a gift from family or whatever. They don't have the means to bridge that gap. So that appraisal could be a really critical thing for somebody like that.
Right. So now, stop it for just a second. The client that you're talking about, the hypothetical buyer that you're talking about someone that maybe got pre-approved but didn't go through the full underwriting process.
No. Say they did. They're fully credit approved for that loan amount, but that approval is still subject to the property appraising at the contract price.
Okay.
So they still expect that to, if whatever loan they were approved for.
Right.
We're just using 20% down as an example. We have loan programs like we talked about earlier. VA is 0.
Right.
Or
awesome.
We have 3% down programs. I was just keeping it simple.
Right.
So that's important for that reason. So there's like the emotional aspect of, did I overpay? Did I not overpay? And then if the appraisal comes in short, can I bridge the gap? Do I want to bridge the gap?
Right.
How do I feel about that? So if you have an appraisal contingency in place, you could use that short or low appraisal value to get out of the purchase. You could just be like, property didn't appraise.
Right.
So I can legitimately excuse myself out of this deal and not risk my deposit, right?
So hypothetically, I got all my ducks in a row.
Yeah.
And I am fully underwritten. I'm ready to go. And I was approved for 1.5.
Yeah.
Okay. And I go in and I come in with my strong RPA.
Yep.
And I have like a very clean list of contingencies that are shortened than the standard 17 days. And I waive my appraisal.
You
so
can do that.
The lender is still going to come in and require the appraisal. So hypothetically, let's say that appraisal comes back at 135.
Yep.
So by waiving that appraisal
contingency,
so then I'm now I'm expected to come out of pocket the balance anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So you're basically, so just because as a buyer you're saying I'm not going to make this purchase contingent upon a third party appraiser agreeing with our price.
Right.
It doesn't mean the lender is agreeing to that. That's just you as the buyer agreeing to that. So I only have my buyers waive their loan contingency if I know that they can bridge a gap.
That gap.
Financially.
That loan to value.
I will know my client well enough, and you, Allie, as the agent, you usually have done, I know how much due diligence you do when getting buyers into contract. You're comping it out. You're checking.
Oh, yeah.
You already know if you're worried, like, I'm a little worried about this appraisal. Nothing else has sold for that much. Like, we're not usually completely blindsided, right? Like, we know when it's going to be a tough appraisal.
Right.
So this is all conversations I would have with my buyer in advance and say, okay, you guys, I get why you want to waive that appraisal contingency. You want to look strong and attractive to the seller to win.
Yep.
But just know, if it comes in short, like, you're going to have to increase your down. Are you cool with that?
Right.
And they're like, oh, yeah, we're totally cool with that. Then it's like, go for it. Wait.
Yeah.
If they're like, oh, hell no, we are not cool with that.
Yeah.
We do not want to increase our down payment. Then it's like, well, wait a second. Then we have to rethink, should you be waiving this contingency? Maybe that is too aggressive for you.
Right.
And we need to keep that intact. You know, I have dealt with situations where appraisals have come in short, and I've seen it go a few different ways. Tip for the week this week, I am so excited to share with you guys. There is a new social club in town. It's in the heart of Redondo Beach in the Riviera Village. Down the same street near the Starbucks for those of you that frequent the Riviera Village, but it's at the Rex restaurant, the Rex Steakhouse, actually. They just opened up a new social club up on their top level. I was able to attend their grand opening, and it is beautiful. It's actually kind of a cigar lounge, so the members have like cigar lockers. I mean, it is so beautiful. Full bar. The restaurant will bring you up anything off menu. They'll, serve to you in the social club.
Yeah.
Full outdoor area, indoor and outdoor, ginormous full wall screen TVs. I mean, it's so beautiful. I really encourage you guys to visit if you'd like. And I believe they are taking applications for their next round of memberships. They kept it very limited. I think there's only like 35 members right now, something like that. But just an incredibly beautiful space. Great food, great bar, great people. So I love it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Until next week.
Until next week.